Good morning. Welcome to another One Mind meditation. Our teacher for this week is Debbie Ford. And today's message deals with trying to find acceptance for everything that lives within us, holding all the parts of being human in open arms of acceptance. Somebody, good morning. Hello, great seeing you. Let's get into today's message. Our greatest sense of dis-ease often comes from expecting ourselves to be only one way. Like always being happy or always being positive, and then being very disappointed with ourselves when we find ourselves being in a way that we don't want to be. Danae, good morning. Maggie, good morning. Awesome seeing you. But being human means that we do experience ourselves in a multitude of different ways. Take a moment to take that in. Being human means that we do experience ourselves in a multitude of different ways. We're going to have moments in which we experience being unhappy. We're going to have moments in which we experience being sad, feeling shame, feeling guilt, feeling anger. If we can't completely stop having those big emotions, if that's not something we can just by force of will stop happening, then what we need is to figure out a different way of being with those big emotions. Charlene, good morning. Hello, great seeing you. The survival part of our human psyche is tasked with keeping us alive, steering us away from what it perceives as danger and towards safety. And the harder we resist and fight the fear in this small self, the more scared it becomes. And more scared means he or she has to fight even harder for survival, creating an inner war of me fighting myself. Debbie Ford says, embracing our dark side gives us a newfound freedom to be with the darkness in others too. For when I can love all of me, I will also be able to love all of you. She says, your life will be transformed when you make peace with your shadow. The caterpillar will become a breathtakingly beautiful butterfly. You will no longer have to pretend to be someone you're not. You will no longer have to prove that you are good enough. When you embrace your shadow, you will no longer have to live in fear. Find the gifts of your shadow, and you will finally revel in all the glory of your true self. Then you will have the freedom to create the life that you've always desired. And the last thought from Debbie Ford for today is, the greatest act of courage is to be and to own all of who you are, without apology, without excuses, without masks to cover the truth of who you are. Beatrix, good morning. Great to see you. Hello. Turning away from big emotions that we don't know how to deal with might feel like it is helpful. Because we never deal with the fear that is at the root cause of our triggers. And if we don't deal with the fear, then turning away doesn't help. It doesn't get better, it only gets worse. When we listen to what our guilt, our shame, our fear is trying to say, then there is an embrace of our darker side, a making peace with our shadow. Having acceptance for our worst parts and inviting and allowing them to speak doesn't mean that we're putting our shadow in the driver's seat, but it does mean that we understand that these parts are really just scared and trying to find a way to survive. Our own empowerment comes not from fighting with our shadow, but from surrendering to our light. Surrendering to our higher self, who has arms big enough to hold our scared parts until the fear has passed. Our meditation today is called a sense of self, and it is an invitation to these inner children, these shadow parts, to come and have a seat with us and allow us to listen to them. You can close your eyes and we'll float away together, starting with the first few big breaths. Take a deep breath in and out. A deep breath in and out. A deep inhale and let it go. Deep breath in and out. One more big breath in and let it all flow away. You can continue the same breathing pattern on your own time. Every slow inhale through your nose gets drawn all the way deep down into your belly. And as you fill up your belly with air, also raise yourself up. As you breathe in, stretch out your spine, lift the top of your head toward the ceiling. And once you've reached your full height, let all of it go. With every exhale, soften. With every breath out, soften your spine, slump down your shoulders, and even drop your head. What comes to my mind as we do our full body breathing is a piece written by Amoda Ma, in which she very eloquently describes, I am no longer scared of dark feelings, because nothing is dark when it is brought into the light. The term shadow work, comes from Carl Jung's work, in which he described shadow as the parts of ourselves that we suppress. In a way, we could also say the emotions that we're trying very hard not to feel. Suppressed emotions never disappear. They don't evaporate and that dark place we push them into. They simply grow bigger. Because our very human body, as at least a part of our programming, has a very deep need for survival. It needs to search out the things we're scared of, to bring them to our attention, to move us into acting in our own survival. And when we try and just ignore those fears, they don't grow less scared, they grow more scared. When we try to fight with parts of ourselves, to push away parts of ourselves, to abandon parts of ourselves, they don't feel better, they feel worse. Whatever is triggered within us is triggered by fear. And when we have fear in our system, the very next thing we do will either create more fear, or it will make what feels scared feel better. When we understand it this way, it becomes clear that fighting this part of myself will of course only increase the fear. And that the only way to decrease the fear is to open my arms to this part of myself that feels scared, and say, let me hold you while you talk. Let me listen to what it is that scares you so. We are inviting our inner children to come and sit on the carpet with us, like a grade 1 teacher inviting the kids and asking them to speak, asking them to remind us of the fears they sometimes experience, and assuring them that we are here to listen. We'll take the last few big breaths of this phase together, helping our bodies stretch, adjust, and settle down into as much comfort as possible for the rest of our journey. Let's take a deep breath in. As you release, drop your head all the way forward, and then roll out your neck muscles forward and to the left, and forward and to the right. Loosen up your neck muscles. Take another deep breath in. As you release, roll your shoulders forward in big, slow circles. Take a deep breath in. As you release, roll your shoulders backwards in big circles, nice and slow. Take a deep breath in. As you release, we'll focus on our spines. See if you can tilt your head to the left while you tilt your hips to the right, curving your spine into an S from your head down to your tailbone. And then change sides. Tilt your head to the right and your hips to the left. One more big breath in. And as you release, you can stretch or move or adjust any part of your body that still needs a bit of help settling down. Having softened our bodies into a state of presence, or at least being realistic, becoming as present as we can be right now, we can now turn our attention inwards and dive deep inside for the next part of our journey. If you don't have the time to sit for the whole meditation with us, then this is always a good place to stop. But if you are here for the whole journey, then with every next inhale, we'll hold our breath for a few short moments, followed by a really long, really slow exhale. Let's take the next few big breaths together. Take a deep breath in and hold. As you release, make it a really long, really slow exhale. Take a deep breath in and hold. As you release, feel into your body. Feel how softness slips into your body and settles in every part of your body. Take a deep breath in and hold. As you release, follow the downwards flow through your body. Feel your shoulders slowly falling. Feel your body slowly softening. And feel how you are slowly slipping deeper into you. One more big breath in and hold. As you release, feel yourself melting. Feel your whole body dissolving. Feel how you are slipping into a deeper level of surrender with every slow exhale. You can continue the same breathing pattern on your own time. Every slow inhale through your nose is an invitation. It invites you to turn inwards and follow this journey within. As you breathe in, feel the air flow in through your nostrils. Feel the air touch the back of your throat. Stay with your breath as it flows in through your lungs. And as you fill up the balloon inside your belly, feel yourself slip all the way in. Hold your breath. But hold it only for as long as it feels easy, followed by a really long, really slow exhale. With your next big breath, as you dive deep into you, I want to remind you that our journey today is inviting some of our inner children to sit with us. The examples that I will use today are guilt, shame, and fear. You could use these examples because they're simple to use, or you can use whatever it is that you might be struggling to deal with right now. In my examples, we are inviting a part of you that perhaps sometimes feels guilty. A part of you that perhaps sometimes feels ashamed. And a part of you that sometimes perhaps feels scared. Bring these three inner children closer. Ask them to come and sit with you as you take your next big breath. Today we are giving an opportunity to these inner children to speak. We are taking the time to listen. And the reason for listening is to understand how the big emotions we sometimes feel have a message that is helpful for us to learn, to hear and learn. All the parts of me that sometimes act or react in fear are just trying to help me survive. And when I understand that, it's easier to hold that. It's easier to open my arms in acceptance. So we'll turn first towards shame. A part of you that perhaps sometimes feels ashamed. This could be recent, it could be from a long time ago. But as you take your next big breath and dive deep into you, we're asking shame to speak, to remind us of the thoughts we think, the feelings we feel, in those moments that we might be overcome with shame. Just listen and remind yourself of what that sounds like. Take your next big breath. Then we'll turn towards this inner child, this part of ourselves that perhaps sometimes feels ashamed. We'll ask it a direct question, and then just sit back and open yourself to possibly hearing an answer from this part. And while you do, open yourself to seeing what this part of you looked like. If you could see this, what would the shame part of you look like? As you take your next big breath and dive deep into you, the question is this. Say, shame, when you feel that emotion, when you feel so ashamed, what is it that you're afraid is going to happen? What is it that you're afraid is going to happen? Take your next big breath and listen. Take a moment to thank shame for speaking, for being seen, for being heard. We know it takes courage. We'll turn our attention to the next inner child, guilt, a part of you that perhaps sometimes feels guilty. And there are so many things that we could possibly feel guilty about. Let's ask this part to speak. Remind us of what it feels like in those moments when we feel guilty. What are the thoughts going through our minds? What are the emotions we feel? We're asking guilt to speak. Take your next big breath. And then we'll turn again to this inner child that we could call guilt and ask a direct question. Say to this inner child, guilt, in those moments where you feel so guilty, please tell me, how is it that you wanted it to be different? What is it that you wanted to be different? Take your next big breath and listen. Take a moment to show gratitude towards this inner child for being seen, for being heard, for speaking up. We know it's a brave thing to do. Thank you. And then lastly, we'll turn our attention to the third inner child we invited. In today's example, that is fear. A part of us that perhaps sometimes feels scared. As you take your next big breath and dive deep into you, we are inviting fear to speak. Remind us of what it feels like when we're scared. Remind us of the thoughts that go through our minds when we're scared, the emotions we feel. Take your next big breath. And then we'll turn towards fear one more time and ask it a direct question. We'll say, fear, in those moments when you feel so scared, please tell me, what is it that you really want for me? What is your deep desire for me? Take your next big breath and listen. Take a moment to thank fear for showing courage, for showing up, for being seen, for being heard. And then as we take the last few big breaths of this phase together, slipping out of the breath holding space and into the next, invite those inner children to come and be wherever it is they want to be. They can sit next to you, they can sit up on top of you, they can crawl inside of you, or whatever it is that comes to mind. Let's take a deep breath in and hold. As you release, make it a really long, really slow exhale. Take a deep breath in and hold. As you release, feel how softness slips in and settles in every fiber of your being. One more big breath in and hold. And as you release, feel yourself slip all the way through. There is no more attention on your breathing. You can sit all the way back or even lie all the way back down and feel yourself just floating. In this meditation, the terminology we use is inviting our inner children for a conversation. In Carl Jung's terminology, this is doing shadow work. And I'd like to point out again, the point of this kind of work is only halfway to give these parts of ourselves the opportunity to speak. That's one half of the work. The other half of this work is understanding who we are when we're listening. Who am I being if I can listen to shame speak within me and hold whatever it is that shame says? Who am I being when I have the capacity to listen to guilt, to listen to fear, and allow those voices to be heard? What we need to be sure of when we do this kind of work is that we're not putting our shadow in the driver's seat. But clearly what we are doing is surrendering to our own light. We are being our higher self, the part of us that has arms big enough to hold all of this in a container of love. I'll share with you one more time Debbie Ford's words that speak to this. She says, embracing our dark side gives us a newfound freedom to be with the darkness in others too. For when I can love all of me, I will love all of you. She says, your life will be transformed when you make peace with your shadow. The caterpillar will become a breathtakingly beautiful butterfly. You will no longer have to pretend you're someone you're not. You no longer have to prove that you're good enough. When you embrace your shadow, you will no longer have to live in fear. Find the gifts of your shadow and you will finally revel in all the glory of your true self. Then you will have the freedom to create the life that you've always desired. And lastly, she says, the greatest act of courage is to be and to own all of who you are without apology, without excuses, without masks to cover the truth of who you are. Having acceptance for our worst parts, and I'm putting worst in brackets. Allowing them to speak does not mean that we're putting our shadow in the driver's seat. But it does mean that we understand that these parts of us are really just scared and trying to find a way to survive. Our own empowerment comes not from fighting our shadow, but from surrendering to our light. From being our higher self who has arms big enough to hold our scared parts until the fear has passed. My wish for you is to fully embody your light and learn that whenever we have dark feelings, when we bring them into the light, then nothing is in darkness. We have the last 5 breaths of gratitude to do together. With every exhale, I'll say my thank you and I invite you to say yours. Take a deep breath in. Thank you for learning that I can have big emotions without being completely overwhelmed by them. Take a deep breath in. Thank you for learning that I have something to learn from my big emotions. There is always something they can teach me. Take a deep breath in. Thank you for learning to trust that every part of me has always just been trying to be helpful, trying to find a way to cope, a way to survive. Take a deep breath in. Thank you for learning how to not be afraid of dark feelings, because nothing is dark when it's brought into the light. One more big breath in. Thank you, beautiful people. Thank you for being on this journey where we are learning how to hold all of those inner children and not feeling the need to be at war with them anymore. Eva, very good morning. It's always nice to see you pop in. Hello. Thank you, Sunmarie. Thank you, Danae. Thank you, Charlene. Thank you, Beatrix. Have a beautiful day, everybody. See you soon. Ciao, ciao.